I never knew. And you know, I've been talking to audiences around this country, bringing them into the death penalty for 20 years now. And people, when I'm over in England, when I'm over in Europe, they say, what is it about the people of the United States? Why do you still have the death penalty in the United States? What is it about American people where they want this legalized vengeance? And you know what I've found with the people? It's not like people are wedded to the death penalty. Yeah, we got to have it. They never think about it because it doesn't touch most people's lives. And they're afraid of crime. And every night when they look at the nightly news, no matter all the peaceful things that have gone on here in Cleveland during the day, you're going to hear about the robbery, or you're going to hear about the rape, or you're going to hear about the crime, and feeding people. And we become afraid. So when someone runs for office and says, we're going to be really tough on crime, we're going to have the death penalty, we believe them. We say, yeah, we got to do something about this crime. Chances of being murdered in the United States are the same as accidental drowning. We think every time we go around a corner, somebody's going to murder us. Most of the murders, 90% of them in New Orleans, happen in the inner city, where poor people kill other poor people. It's when it happens in the suburbs, though. And it's overwhelming, the application of the death penalty. We look at the track record. We've been doing this for 30 years. 76, the Supreme Court put the death penalty back. And we start off with a really good theory of how it's supposed to work. And the Bill of Rights for everybody. And people accused of crime, you're going to have an attorney. You're going to be able to know your rights. You're going to be able to access them. And then the Supreme Court says now only the worst of the worst murders now. The death penalty is not for ordinary murders. Anybody tell me what that means? Well, they killed my mama, but you know, it's like ordinary, you know, it's a garden variety murder. And so then you start with aggravating circumstances you got to have the worst of the worst. And throw in then mitigating circumstances, and here you are, the jury, and here you're hearing like John Brooks in Louisiana, who killed 6 people. He killed them, bang, bang, bang. He was reloading to kill more people, and they overpowered him. And he's brought to trial in the New Orleans criminal court, and it was a slam dunk. He got the death penalty without the jury even taking a breath. He killed 6 people until an attorney in the appeals was able to do mitigation and tell John Brooks' story that the jury who sentenced him to death never heard. And so what does the jury hear? Look at this terrible crime. And they hear about John Brooks, that when his 13-year-old mother was pregnant for him, she thought she had a bad case of worms, and she's beating her stomach to get the worms out. And that was only the first beating John Brooks ever had, and he was never completely right and abused all through his life. Pumped the violence into John Brooks, and one day he explodes, he kills 6 people. And when the jury, the new jury, because they got a new sentencing hearing, heard the story of John Brooks, unanimously they agreed that the state of Louisiana, who had never done anything for him to help him, should not kill him but give him life. Imagine the dilemma of jurors. Only the worst of the worst now. What's not the worst of the worst when it's your loved one who's murdered? When a person's killed, the universe is lost. They can never be replaced. And so here you're the jury, just ordinary good folks like us sitting in here. Now you decide now, it's a terrible crime, but then look at his life and look what happened, and anything can come in mitigation. And so you have one mother who's the victim, daughter was killed, or somebody in her family, and they're saying to the jury, please, please, I ask you to give the ultimate penalty because it's going to honor my child's life. Anything less than the death penalty looks like you're dishonoring them. They killed my daughter and she's dead forever, and you're going to give them something less than death? And so all of that in people's minds, the equity of what does justice demand? A death for a death. That's the only fair thing. And then the jury hears the mother who says, please don't kill my son. What are you going to do? You know the story in the Bible about Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, and 2 women claiming the baby is their own. There's chicken feed next to these kind of things that jurors have to try to decide. Who has the wisdom to know this? We don't know. We don't. And then, of course, you have the system of law. You have the courts. You have the appeals. I honestly thought, when I went into this, Patrick Saunier was the first, I thought anybody who's going to go to trial for their life in this country may not have the best attorneys in the country, but at least they had decent attorneys who were going to fight for them to access the constitutional protections. We have 135 wrongfully convicted people who have come off a death row. And when you read the stories of what kind of defense they got, and prosecution, when you don't give them limits and boundaries, they have a lot of power. Not all prosecution. Let me speak here for the goodness of prosecutors, for the most part, across the United States, who do the right thing for the people, to save people, to protect people from really heinous crimes. But when you got the Green Bay Packers up against a high school varsity team, when you got a defense attorney like in Louisiana or like in Georgia, especially in the deep South states, or in the county here, where they're giving $12,500 for a death penalty case, for a capital case, and you suppose include your expert witnesses, everything in that. It can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars when you really do the defense well. Well, we're not going to put the money in for that, these criminals, these people. And what happens is, prosecution's in charge of the evidence. Now, they're supposed to turn over any exculpatory evidence over to the defense. They're in charge of it. And all these 135 cases of people wrongfully convicted who, because college students who are volunteers in innocent projects, went and dug up all the stuff to get them out. It's always, most of the cases in Louisiana as well, the people who've come off a death row, it was evidence the jury never heard because it was not presented to them. Because the only bar you have to reach in a jury trial is reasonable doubt. The two people that I have accompanied to death were six, but Dobie Gillis Williams in Louisiana and Joseph Odell in Virginia. In Dobie's case, his attorney did nothing for him. There was no independent forensic testing, and he had an all-white jury, and a white woman had been killed in her bathroom in a little town of Manny, Louisiana. It was so slam dunk, all-white jury, and you just read the case, and you want to weep. He never had a chance. And then Joseph Odell, a man in Virginia, kept saying, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And then he finds out the defense appointed to him is calling and telling the prosecution everything he's saying to him. He says, I'll go pro se. Better for me to defend myself than to have a defense attorney who's working against me. And they move along, it's all circumstantial, and then all of a sudden, surprise witness, Steve Watson pops up and seals the case by saying, Joe Odell confessed to me when we were in the cell together that he killed Helen Shartner, and Joe didn't even know how to do a credibility check on Steve Watson. He didn't know how to counter it. And Joe is killed. He's executed. I'm writing a book on it. And 6 years after I'm into it, Steve Watson, I get an email, and I get a phone call, and he goes, what do I do? I lied, and Joe died. And I'm retired now. I got a bad heart, and I'm sitting in my living room, and Joe's face keeps coming in my living room. Jailhouse snitches are used. Steve Watson was allowed to give that testimony. Joe knew nothing of it, surprise, and it prevailed. So when the prosecution wrapped up the case with Joe Odell, he just said it was circumstantial, but Steve Watson seals it for us. He takes the doubt out of it. Here there was a confession about it. And it kept Joe Odell, the story of Joe Odell is so amazing in a way. In another way, it's not. Italy gets involved in the case of Joe Odell. This is all in death of innocence. The night Joseph Odell is killed in Virginia, where nobody blinked an eye, one more person going to execution in Virginia, 5 million people in Italy were tuned to their radios to hear about the last moments of Joseph Odell.